Thanks for coming. Thanks to Canonical for inviting me. This is basically going to be a Charmed OpenStack Juju success story. I could talk about this until midnight, but I only have 25 minutes, and I'm really going to rush through it, so let's get started. First, a brief introduction to me and my company. I'm going to tell about some things, some mistakes we have been doing from the beginning, some things that were hard when starting to use Charmed OpenStack and Juju. Good practices, not necessarily best. I'm going to talk about some Juju-specific topics, how I interpret, how it was working with Juju and learning it, and like demystifying the controller also, how to operate Juju. Some experience been doing when upgrading stuff with Juju, various upgrades. Our story of building our own charms, and some summary future work. My name is Johan Hallbäck. I'm from Sweden. I've been living in Germany for 3 years. I started using Juju 2018 when we started deploying HPC clusters at Scania, the truck manufacturer. And I have been at ABO Automotive Systems since 2019, and since then basically worked with Charmed OpenStack there. I'm available on Charm Hub Discourse and the Charm Hub chat if you want to reach out. So my company, ABO Automotive Systems, is based in Hamburg, Germany. It's, we develop solid-state LiDARs for cars and other vehicles. So we are in the automotive business, autonomous driving and traffic security. And we are about 400 people, and the vast majority of us are, or them, are software developers, quite skilled, and they know what they want, they know what they need. They do everything on Ubuntu, both code-wise, kind of their development environments, their CI/CD, and also the desktops. So it's quite a fun environment to work in. Like many others, we had a traditional virtualization infrastructure before we started with Charmed OpenStack. And it was basically hard for IT to keep up with this, and it was too slow. Our use case was quite simple also because we had virtualization, we had file storage and block storage. Of course, both storage systems was from the same vendor, but of course had nothing to do with each other in terms of like how they were operating and stuff. Our workload is heavy CI/CD, lots of sensor data processing from trips, test trips when they have been driving around with cars and so on. And we also have some simulation and validation things. So not so really, can be expensive for a small company in the cloud. So we started to build a completely separate infrastructure, including the network and everything in 2019. So where do you start when taking on a task like this? So basically what I did was like, for every charm in a bundle, which was the OpenStack telemetry bundle from 2019, and try to read the documentation and the configuration options, and from there, hit it off. Otherwise, of course, the charms deployment guide is great. There's a MAAS documentation, basically everything before and after Juju, and then there's the OpenStack charm guide, which covers how to work with Juju and upgrade the charms and so on. And Ubuntu.com also has some good Ceph docs. So we started with, at the time it wasn't recommended to do like anything else but basically a replication. So 3 racks made sense from a Ceph point of view. So on top here we have every node is connected to with 2 interfaces connected to 100 gig switches, and then we have one switch for the MAAS install network. MAAS and the Ceph monitors, these nodes also run a lot of LXD containers for monitoring and the API things in OpenStack and so on. The green nodes are test clustered, and there's some 12 Nova nodes and 24 Ceph OSD nodes. Nothing complicated. This is my favorite picture. It's from James Page. It's from a blog entry about MAAS 1.9 from 2015. This is how I kind of try to understand how to do networking MAAS. Networking is, of course, the most difficult thing to start when it comes to understanding how to start using neutron and so on. Juju helps actually a bit. How this should be done, I think, is to look at what does the tools dictate. So in MAAS, you define your layer 2 constructs like bonds and VLANs, and you define your layer 3 things like subnets and spaces. These can then be consumed by Juju, and you can assign these subnets to some OS public network variables or bind the spaces to endpoints and so on. And for Neutron, you can take the layer 2 things you defined in MAAS and map this into OpenVSwitch, and it also pretty much works the same for OVN, and that would be like nice. We did one thing wrong, which turned out to be working quite well, but it's not recommended. So we designed the network before we started looking at the products at all. So we went for a like 100% layer 3 approach with routing on the host using BGP and EVPN. And we only used MAAS basically for can I point with this? Yeah, I can. Cool. Basically here's MAAS and the internal OpenStack network and the LXCs, and the rest here, all these bridges and all these virtual Ethernet interfaces and all these VXLAN things, this VNI, this is all we had to apply afterwards. This kind of breaks the automation of Juju, and so we need to deploy our OpenStack bundle without relations, and then we need to run a script we made for our own, and to install FRR on all machines, create all these host bridges, and this also includes IP allocation also into the LXDs, and everything. So it's you can do it, but it's not optimal. So and this is one thing. I think this is also going to hurt us when we want to start using OVN because we kind of do stuff that's not as intended, and it's a lesson learned kind of. So GPUs in Nova. In our company, we have lots of small teams. They have maybe a budget that isn't so big, so when they need to use GPUs, they buy this kind of tower PC, put under their desk and connect it to the office network. They have problems with storage going too slow. They install something that takes them a week, and I don't want to be mean here, but it's probably hard. And then they can share these resources between teams, and then they go to waste kind of. So the right way to do this is to look at this video by Titus Kurek and James Page and some people from NVIDIA, and add the Nova Compute NVIDIA GPU subordinate to Nova Compute, buy a real card, one of those that's listed on this site, and then divide your GPUs into from one GPU you want like 8 or 16 vGPUs, and then you just create a trait, create a flavor, and add this and boot an instance, and then you're good to go. There is, but actually, if you have not so cool cards, with the tools we are using, it's awesome, and you can create good things anyway. Because MAAS has a really nice feature, that you can the tags you can create and assign to machines, they can also contain kernel options. So it's possible here to enable the AMD IOMMU and tell which PCI IDs are supposed to be passed through. And then, of course, you just apply this tag to a node and deploy the Nova Compute Charm, the same as you would as all the others, also the ones without GPU. And then you configure all units, the entire app, so that and create an alias for your new card. And then you once again tell which PCI ID should be in the pass-through whitelist. You extend on the Nova Cloud Controller, simply extend the default scheduler, the enabled schedulers with the aggregate instance extra specs filter and the PCI pass-through filter. And then the rest is pretty much OpenStack. So just create a host aggregate, set a property on it, and add this new host you deployed with the GPU to this host aggregate. And then just create a flavor mentioning the aggregate specification and the PCI pass-through alias we created with Juju config before. and then you can boot this new flavor. And also assign here, like this 2 here. So if you have 2 cards, you can give one instance both of them. And this way, it's possible to for our users to actually, if some group doesn't need to use their virtual instances with GPUs at some point, they can say, I will shelve it, and then some other team can consume it. And so they are now becoming members of the respective OpenStack projects inside our company, and they can share this. And I think this lays a really cool groundwork for introducing. They use Slurm, but they don't use it Charmed yet, and I think they will, because they will never look back when they've seen it. Because we have deployed we use Candid for Active Directory integration, and so they wouldn't need to manage the controller infrastructure. And I think that would be cool. And they will have then their bare metal with the GPUs and their normal virtual OpenStack instances in the same cloud substrate. The first Ceph trap we ran into is that we bought these 3 racks, thought this is really great, but we didn't observe that you're supposed to define your failure domain to be rack and in MAAS. And this is a very clever feature that if you deploy a Ceph cluster and in your MAAS you have 3 availability zones, they are going to be like divided by rack, so that you can be sure that if you lose 1 rack, you only have lost 1 copy of the 3 in our case, if you remember the rack picture. So and this is very annoying to fix afterwards. It's possible, but it's just about a couple of weeks of backfilling, and then it can be nice and fine, like this simple example. And the second mistake we did was that we forgot to set this BlueStar block DB size, and it's also like was like a configuration change that you just can't UU config it and then it's fixed, because when this gets wrong and you deploy, you bought your nice NVMe disks, and you wanted 1 terabyte from each of them, and then it turns out you got 1 gigabyte because there's a nice default here. And the easiest thing here, the good thing here is we have Juju, so what can we do? We just out, down, purge, and zap, run all these actions on one unit on all disks, and then remove the unit and add it back, and then it backfills with the correct settings again once we have corrected this. So this also took a couple of weeks, but this is like, these are best practices that they are documented, but they are hard to find, and it's hard for beginners to fix this. One thing we have that made a huge difference for us when it comes to performance was that to enable to change CPU governor to have the performance mode and not the on-demand or this what is it called, environmental, you know what I mean. So the important thing here is to let the service hand over the control to the operating system, and then use the NRPE, the Nagios charm, to monitor this, that all machines have the correct performance settings, so that you don't have a couple of machines that really are much slower. And then one thing that's really cool with the telegraph charm is if you enable the collect IPME sensor metrics boolean, you can monitor fan speed, power consumption on each like power supply and so on, and maybe then your entire environment, and see how this how changing this on the running system, how this affects your power consumption. And also perfect task for the nice feature, the UU model config cloud init user data, is to do this once when you install the system, and then you're good, because you never need to change it again. About Juju then, so everything is fine until you have your first hook failure and you don't know what it is. So actually, it's great that Canonical, thanks to Pietro, that has made this official. I got this on a post-it note 2018 from Dmitry Shabakov. It actually took several post-it notes for him to kind of puzzle this together. But this is really nice that this is finally available. And also Petro's tool JHack tails, so that you can see on your charms what's actually going on. It's much easier to understand things. But I consider also as an operator that code reading skills are required to use a system like this. And you need to understand how hooks work. You need to manually run them. Occasionally, you need to manually disable them also if you know that this is never going to be true, no matter how hard you try. And also one thing it's important, I think, to know, once again, code reading skills are required. Configuration rendering is tricky sometimes because you read the documentation of the charm, but still kind of it binds on the wrong interface and whatever. And you need to track these templates and what's in them back to the code and kind of understand. And also another thing, if you feel that you have the need to hack here, you're probably doing something wrong. Mostly you're doing something wrong, or that's what we've learned so far. So about the Juju controller then. Okay, from a user perspective now, right? I think this is rock solid black box on which your entire infrastructure is dependent. So what can you do without it? I can tell you this, basically nothing. You can find your SSH keys, and if you know the IP numbers or host names, you can probably also find your servers, or not, depending on, yeah. So actually think about the situation, think about how urgent things are. Can you rely on the community, or do you need commercial support? It's very important for you users to understand this. And this is not necessarily a bad thing, but just consider it. And I have here a set of tricks to kind of know how my environment is doing. So I like to UUHA. The best feature I have had from this is it's not critical if I need to reboot a Juju controller, but it's critical if the only one I had isn't working. So I think I have used this 2 times when I accidentally had disk full conditions. So I had, or something else, some network outage or whatever. So it didn't look like this. So one of them were like lagging behind. It wasn't in the game at all. So basically, what I did was this is MongoDB stuff. So just stop MongoDB and UUD and clear this directory and restart, and the system replicates and everything is back online. I think that's a really cool feature with UUHA. And so here's a bit thin ice for me, but so leadership and Raft, I learned this the hard way also, that when this doesn't work, nothing works. So if your charms can't, or units can't understand who's leader, not a single hook will work, nothing at all. So, and this is handled by something called Raft, which is a consensus algorithm, and it has stored state that is replicated between the servers, and one of them, the Juju controllers, and one of them is server, and one of them is leader, and the rest are followers. If this cool command Juju engine report says started everywhere, and they kind of agree on who's leader, everything is fine. If not, search for help. Obvious, Juju create backup, run this in cron, ship the backups away somewhere. A tip, if you have a password set on your Juju users, just put the password in clear text on the server which is running this in the accounts.yaml, then this will work just fine. A general advice also for if you run Juju controllers in LXD on really fat hosts is to tell LXD set limits on your containers. Something, I don't know what's, so with 96 gigs of RAM, your Juju controllers, even if the database is 4 gig, it can be that they consume 40 gigs of RAM for some reason. So it's better to make them a little bit smaller, and everything will be much better. Also, directly when you have upgraded your Juju controller, upgrade all models directly, or else you're going to have funny errors. So our success story when it comes to upgrading, it's kind of a success story. This is the verdict, at least. So I'm going to talk about OpenStack and Ceph upgrades and series upgrades. So we started 2019, and we've done some version jumps here. Basically, everything has gone quite well. No reinstalls or anything. And we also migrated from Charm Store to Charm Hub. Our production environment needs a little bit to get to focal yoga, but this will happen soon. Upgrading charms, I would consider this risk-free if when it comes to your server uptime. That should not be a problem. Also, upgrading, as I said, to Charm Hub was no problem at all. I think that this migrating to channels for OpenStack and Ceph charms when they are Athena and above, that's kind of when I did this in August, September, hadn't really settled, I would say. But of course, it's going to be nice soon. And the Juju info command is really great to see what's available for your charm and series. When it comes to OpenStack and Ceph upgrades, this is like Juju completely dominates because we have here, like OpenStack is really a lot of different applications that are running a lot of different charms, but every OpenStack charm has the exact same upgrade procedure. And it actually happens a bit of things under the hood. Scripts are run that upgrades databases in Nova and all these services and so on. But it's always boils down to basically just set your OpenStack origin and run an action. Do it on the leader first. Use HA cluster and everything is probably going to work really well. Yeah, we do this daytime, by the way. Ceph as well. It's rolling upgrade. You just flip on this Ceph, this source Juju config, and I mean, this is really brilliant. Serious upgrades, I would say the same. They are a little bit more time-consuming if you have a lot of virtual instances in Nova, but it's also the same here. And here I think I can, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I can say that this is valid for all charms because it's standardized which hooks are supposed to run when you do like this pre-series upgrade and post-series upgrade. And the cool thing with OpenStack charms is also, and together with the packaging in Ubuntu and Ubuntu Cloud Archives, is that if you do a dist upgrade, you stay on the same Ceph or Nova or whatever version, due to that for example, Bionic Usuri and Focal Distro are the same. So use a MAAS proxy if you have a really big environment. MAAS app proxy. So about working with Juju and charming them. So Juju has such a steep learning curve. Have you ever heard that before? So but I don't think, I kind of disagree, because as kind of a seasoned sysadmin that can script can be productive in Juju as well. Actually, can be much more productive. And you don't need to be a super developer and know everything about ops charms and Python and so on. You can actually just do a hooks charm and you also get some monitoring for free. So we figured out, that, you know, I mentioned before that we had in every rack, the top of rack switches are two 100 gig MELLANOX switches. We figured out that they can actually PXE boot if you break into the kind of BIOS and flip over to PXE. And what that means is that we can enlist them in MAAS. So they have a nice MELLANOX machine here with 34 interfaces. Oh, great. And then we can also get a serial console on them if we do this trick again with tagging them in MAAS and enabling some kernel options. So, and then I figured out I only need Ubuntu and I only need to install FRR, which is packaged by their community, and they have a PPA and so on. So this is really easy. And the rest is just MTU management with a config variable, and NetPlan does the rest. So this means that we have here in our production model, we have our charm here, and then we just hook it up with an RPE so that we know all the switches are up. and NTP and like telegraph and so on, which means that also in the same model and in the same Grafana that we have on each switch port for compute and Ceph nodes, we can also just go into the switch, when it's pulled down, when you go into the switch and on port 32 there's a lot of activity. So okay, now I understand what's going on here. Like, it's awesome. And I'm gonna end this presentation with some current issues and where we think we're going. What we figured out is that OpenStack, just deploying OpenStack doesn't give you all services you need, even in our simple use case. So we were a little bit not so happy with the stability and how NFS Ganesha worked. And but then we figured out that we are not so happy with how NFS works in like an enterprise environment either. So it wasn't that big deal. So we decided to use Juju once again in the model to actually just deploy machines manually, and we set up a Samba CTDB cluster running in LXD with CephFS under it, and set up a SSSD cluster for the Active Directory integration. And then we noticed that, whoa, we have this works faster, to our surprise, than actually our previous NAS appliance that we had from one of these expensive companies. And I think that's really cool. My plan is to charm that at one time. I also seen that a Ceph NFS charm is coming, which is for the newest version of Ceph. But this also doesn't integrate with Manila, so no dashboard and so on, and no self-service. I'm not sure, and it's still NFS. The last slide. So backup. You deploy OpenStack does not solve your backup problem. For NAS workloads, we have simply continued to use our old backup appliance. It works really well, and I didn't think that, but it's really fast. And when it comes to virtual instances and Nova, I'm really impressed by this company, Trilio, because they develop a software-only solution that runs in LXD in your production OpenStack model, which is a dashboard integrated also, and they handle it over to you. They deliver it through Sharps. So you can basically just add this to your bundle and do it. Okay, there's a license fee, but it wasn't that bad. The biggest problem, I think, is how to back up Ceph Rados gateway. Okay, replication with versioning to another Ceph cluster, yeah, that's great, but then you have two Ceph clusters, and how do you roll this back? I don't know really. Could also create some file style backup with rclone. I'm not sure there. And in the future, we will also try to integrate Kubernetes as well into our OpenStack. There's also a big question right now how we will do with Oven because of this network issues I mentioned with our little own design there. So thank you so much for your attention. And I also want to mention that under the tag community workshops on this course, there's sometimes, not always, but sometimes on Fridays or Thursdays or whenever, there's really cool people showing things with Juju, sometimes from Canonical, sometimes also other people. Check it out. There's a channel, yeah, that tag, and there's also a channel in the Charm Hub chat on Mattermost. So if you're interested, come by and please just share anything. Does not need to be fancy like a presentation or anything. Just all contributions are welcome. Thanks again.